community is clipped out of context. Stuff like saying that I deny rapes on October 7, and it's literally like a 2-second clip. And it's literally me in the fuller context actually arguing with a chatter who said, how can you claim that rapes could have happened on October 7? And I'm saying, like, no, sexual violence has a tendency to occur in moments like this. So, like, I'm not going to immediately dismiss claims of sexual violence happening on October 7. And they clip the part where I say, even if sexual violence did happen, that doesn't change the dynamic of genocide for me at all. I think it's like completely inappropriate to say that it's, that genocide is permissible because sexual violence occurred. And they clip the part where I say, even if rape doesn't change the dynamic for me about what's going on at all, to make it seem like I'm saying, one, no rapes happen, and two, that I don't care if rapes happen. It's stuff like that. It's riddled with things like that, and claiming that I'm calling like all Jews inbred or whatever, and I'm talking about specifically the fucking terrorist group, like the JDL terrorist group, destroying aid that was going into Gaza. And then I describe the context of the situation where I'm like, this is like, if I look at the longer clip from that same time frame, and it's like 30 seconds prior, I'm literally describing like, this is a right-wing settler terrorist group comprised of a bunch of inbred fucking psychos that are going in to destroy aid going into Gaza. And then he cuts that part to be like, oh, he's calling all Jewish people inbred. It's stuff like that for the most part. That's basic stuff. If you say anything even remotely pro-Palestinian, you're going to get attacked that way all the time on the internet. I'm sure you guys live stream a lot, so I'm sure you're very familiar with the ways in which sometimes people clip you out of context. But the thing I took offense to, for the most part, was like the liberal Zionist Hasbara that took place, where he said a bunch of like incredibly ahistorical claims, like that were, I think, very insensitive and also demonstrably untrue. Saying that 1 million Jews were displaced from the surrounding Arab regions, like expelled forcibly. And he called the Nakba like the War of Independence or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what he said. And no, the Nakba was, the forcible expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians from their ancestral homelands from 1947 to 1949. And according to Israeli historian Ilan Pappé, this is very well documented. It was planned out. It was a well documented ethnic cleansing operation. So it's pretty basic information about the history of Palestine and Israel. So I didn't necessarily care about all the other shit. Him being like, oh, he loves terrorism. Like there's a moment where he talks about like Hamas and Hezbollah, and he makes it seem as though these resistance groups just kind of exist in the ether. Like they just kind of existed historically throughout the inception of the nation state of Israel, when both of these are different forms of Palestinian resistance that has evolved throughout time and increasingly become more violent in ways that I, of course, disagree with as well. But, it's anytime I talk about their tactics, or anytime I offer context to how, like, even Hamas itself has evolved throughout history, starting as a Muslim Brotherhood cutout that was a Islamic charity initially, one that actually Israel supported as well, specifically to undermine the secular resistance groups like the PFLP, DFLP, the PLO in its entirety, because they thought that the Islamist fundamentalists would never garner any sort of positive Western support, making it seem as though these are just like groups that are entirely motivated by anti-Semitism and not developed through the process of 75 years of occupation, death, and destruction. It's all things like that I consider to be ahistorical. I mean, not that I consider it, it's just ahistorical and completely devoid of nuance. And I think it serves the purpose of defending Israel from a more progressive standpoint. It's not something I'm unfamiliar with. I've heard it a million times over. It's not like as egregious as being like, oh, I hope your beeper is, on notice or whatever. Like, I hope Israel kills you. It's not like that, but it's another way to, I guess, tackle the issue while consistently presenting Palestinians as like anti-Semitic terrorists across the board while saying you're pro-Palestinian.
Yeah, I'll say this. So I'm also pro-Palestinian, and
you're like, you're a Zoomer.
You are infinitely like more educated and invested in Israel and Palestine than I am. I'm more. I understand the basics, and I just very vehemently disagree with ethnic cleansing, genocide, and unwarranted human death. That's as far as my stance goes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm pro-Palestine. But I will say, like, I've had conversations with Zionists and individuals that are pro-Israeli on live, and next thing you know, just because I don't necessarily support the existence of an ethno-state that wants to eradicate the existence of surrounding Arabs and Arab nations, like, oh, all of a sudden I hate all Jewish people. Or because I think that Zionism is bad because it's predicated on, colonialism and imperialism, all of a sudden it's anti-Semitic. So I understand how, one could posture a pro-Palestinian view to be anti-Semitic to kind of just diminish the value and support of a humane cause. Yeah. But I don't know the specifics and the intricacies at all. But I want to learn more, and I want to learn more about you. I do. I really do. I want to finish that content nuke. I want to get your takes. From you said you reacted to it on stream. I'll probably do that.
No, I to be fair, I didn't react to the thing in its entirety. And I might in the future, because I was thinking about maybe bringing in some historians to also talk about it regardless. Because like at the end of the day, it is, it's important to address a lot of the false claims being made. Not necessarily about me being like pro-terror or whatever. That I hear that all the fucking time. That doesn't mean anything. Congressman Richie Torres wrote a letter to Twitch back in the day, like I think a week before his election. He was on the ballot, demanding that I get banned because I was like the arch pro-terrorist supporter. Richie Torres, of course, is a massive Israel advocate from one of the poorest districts in the country, and spends most of his time talking about Israel instead of his own constituents. But I get attacked by the ADL and stuff like that. All that stuff is ultimately meaningless. But I do care about the history of it, and I want to make sure that people are not misinformed about how things have taken place, because I think that's what matters. The truth matters more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I can obviously respect the prerogative of valuing truth over all else. Yeah. And I hold the same perspective. And I'm sure that there's maybe like a handful of people watching that are like, oh my God, Dean, you're sucking up to Hassan, and you're not.
Oh, no,
you're not
you guys are the arch debate lords. You can take me to task on this issue if you want.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of your content.
I'll call you out, okay? And I mean that. I will. Yeah. I will. I see some fuck shit, I'll do it.
Let me tell you guys something, by the way. As someone who has also debated and still every now and then engages in debate, I will say, as a content creator who's been doing this for a very long time, I love what you guys are doing. I will urge you to, consistently end up debating and stuff, but like, I warn against the toxicity that might create for you. And it's good to diversify. It's good to diversify your content in general, and like do React content, more fun stuff, things of that nature, more educational content, because there are a lot of people who enjoy the blood sport of it all, but they don't necessarily care about the truth. They just want to see dunks. And
sorry, Hassan, my bad. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Dean Harry's in the box.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead and continue.
My bad.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is, like, as someone who did a lot of debate initially, I think that I noticed at least, like, there's a point where it turns into you basically cultivate a community. I warn against this. You basically cultivate a community of people that just like want slam dunks, and it does become a little toxic in my experience. Maybe you guys are avoiding that. I don't know how it works on TikTok in general, but I would definitely diversify my content if I were in your shoes.
Well, I agree with you, and I can even expand on that. So apart from the cultivation of this niche that becomes toxic at a point because pro slam dunks, I even like find myself falling into that sometimes. Sometimes somebody will just be pissing me off so much that I'm no longer focused on trying to inform and educate, and I'd just rather slam dunk their ass because they're really upsetting me. But then also, kind of like toxicity that it can cultivate outside of, like a toxic content creation environment and consumption environment is, God, dude, it does a lot to your mental well-being to just debate people for 4 hours a day. So I'm starting to expand outwards, and hopefully I'll soon be able to get to a point where I'm doing other content apart from debates. It's actually funny because you and the way you do your content, kind of like doing debates with some reactionary content and other related forms of political information and education-esque content, actually came up in a conversation I was having with somebody that's kind of been helping me. They're like, well, look at Hassan, he's doing it perfect. He does debates and reactionary content, and that seems like a much better way to live your life.
Well, for me, like I have an ideological purpose, and it's not something that I hide. I've even, openly admitted to. I call myself a propagandist on Piers Morgan's show, which everyone always points to. What do you mean you're a propagandist? Like I don't like. I use propaganda in the old terminology for it. I had a show on the Young Turks back in the day called agitative propaganda as well, where my goal is to try to instill class consciousness in the American working class, because I feel like that is what's most lacking from our political discourse in general. So, like I have an ideological goal. I want Americans to recognize that it's not your neighbors that are fucking you over. It's not undocumented migrants. It's not trans people. It's not DEI. And these things are simply purposeful distractions that reactionary forces utilize while they fucking rob you blind with austerity and an overall refusal to improve your material conditions, whether that is the Republican Party in many circumstances, or even in other instances, the Democratic Party that refuses to push the needle in the direction of necessary change. So for that purpose, I'm saying I realized that like simply doing debates alone was not cutting it, because I wanted to create a community that was engaged, listening, learning, and also seeking out information on their own. But more importantly, that they were also engaging in activism, organizing, whether that be community organizing or labor organizing. And I have a lot of obviously local officials in my chat at any given moment, or even people that apparently work at the DNC, which was shocking to me when I went there, but and of course many labor union organizers and activists in general. So that's what I mean when I say debates. Debates are great for content. It's good for slam dunks. It has an educational value for sure. You get to understand the opposition's position. You get to teach people what the talking points are, what their talking points are, and how to effectively counter them. And I think the takeaway for many in your audience will be how to effectively dismantle those propaganda points and the arguments that your grandparents or your parents might be making or your coworkers are making. But beyond that, I think in order for people to unlock their true potential and be able to bring about real progressive change and create systems of pressure, like mechanisms of pushback, sometimes pushback that's even warranted towards the Democratic Party, I think that there's more to do. And it'll create a more sustainable career for you as well, in general, for all of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, at least when it comes to my approach, like I agree, like the left as a whole, or like progressives and like in general need a multifaceted approach in terms of like the different content people like go towards. And I also think that like for certain creators, there's going to be certain skill sets that you're going to have where you're going to be able to do a certain set of content very consistently, a lot more if you're interested in it, if you like doing it, and if you can bring the energy every single time. And as it relates to like things like debates, I think that like people like me and Dean, we have a lot more of a pressure and push internally to engage in that particular type of activism and work comparative to other forms, because it comes more naturally to us, or it's some like way we can explain things a little bit more in depth. And one thing I have an issue with in terms of content that's like, reaction based or other stuff like that, is that there's no back and forth direct sort of response from people. So I think that oftentimes it can create more echo chambers, like naturally, like when you engage in like reaction based content. So I actually think myself that, like, of course there's going to be people who are just trying to look for slam dunks in terms of debate type content that's live debates. But I mean, I think that would be true for short form content, reaction based content, or any other form of content that would exist on social media. And I think actually is alleviated more when we engage in live debates, because it's like more in person, real. You can humanize people more because you're engaging in direct conversation. That's at least how I view it. But like, I think that, we should engage in other
You're right. No, you're
content.
absolutely right. I think there's definitely a space for debating for sure. I'm not discounting that at all. I'm just saying that it's good to diversify your content as well. On top of that, for sustainability in general, and also on top of that, to create a broader community that has more interest, because debates do sometimes have a tendency to just like narrow your focus a little too much. That's all I'm saying. But
I agree with that.
You guys are doing great. Don't get me wrong. You guys are
3 a.m. and join some random person's live and try to convince them that they were wrong and I was right. And then it just kind of like snowballed into what it is now. And kind of like what Parker said, I think that if we want to build this literal fucking machine to get as many people as possible to be more and more progressive, right, and less bigoted, less on the right, further to the left, it requires a very multifaceted approach with a functioning ecosystem of different people that are doing different things. And like when I've had people come up on my live before and been like, "Oh, Dean, you suck. You're just a rage baiter. You do reactionary content that does no good." I guess like on one hand, it's like I should do more for interests to society as well as self-interests. But then on the other hand, it's like, I'm good at this. I'm going to focus on what I'm good at. And there's other individuals that will focus on what they're good at. But, hopefully, I mean, if this turns into something long term, I'll be good at multiple things,
Yeah. Look, I'm dog shit at gaming. I'm dog shit at gaming. I still play video games on a stream because I know that it like brings in a different audience as well. In my line of work, I've realized, especially the position that I'm advocating for, is one that either Americans especially are either completely oblivious to and have never heard of it, or are inherently antagonistic to. So charitability is the most important thing. And I think like collaborations and people seeing me in a different light and not just simply clips, because that's just the most common way that, people learn about other content creators, is the best way forward. But that's just for me. I'm not saying it's for all of you guys as well. I'm just sharing what I've seen through my experience.
Yeah, of course, man. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Does anybody else want to hop in here?
Yeah, who wants to debate me? Harry, you go.
Harry, go ahead.
I
Hassan,
don't know. What do I have to say,
Hassan,
man?
one time on stream, well, you referenced Harry as like the DNC shill, and then you referenced me as the car guy. So at least Harry gets a name.
Hassan, do you still think I'm a shill?
I don't know. I haven't seen any of your new stuff, so I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you'd see Harry as a shill. Yeah.
Let me ask you. No. This is important. What do you think about Hakeem Jeffries' performance so far?
You mean as the minority leader, just generally the past couple of years, or since Trump has gotten into office?
Since Trump, since Trump's coming.
Pretty mediocre. Mediocre.
All right. That's good.
I mean, it's been too weak. I don't like how he's not criticized like Eric Adams.
Yeah.
I think that's fucking insane. I know he's like taking the position of, we have to wait and see if the charges are dismissed. I think that's bullshit. I don't think he's been hard enough on Trump. I really don't like how like Jerry Connolly is leading the Judiciary Committee and not AOC. I think we've been making like some very simple mistakes. So
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's
Yeah,
helpful.
Hassan, it is possible to be nuanced. You know, like the moderate Democrats are too moderate, and the progressive Democrats are too progressive, and you could just be somewhere in the middle.
I have a question too.
What's up?
Okay. And this is because I feel like I've been getting more radical in my views on this topic. But the main critique that I've seen from your supporters, and I think even you called me way too libbed out for this when you were reacting to my Jubilee episode.
I think it was the immigration stuff, maybe.
Immigration policy. Yes, I wanted to ask you about that. So, in accordance with the stance that I either shared on the Jubilee episode, or I could just kind of reiterate my thoughts on immigration now, I'd love for you to tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. First, we'll start with border policy. So, border policy, what I want in my best version of the world is as many ports of entry that operate as efficiently and as quickly as possible with screening processes that specifically expel and do not allow people into the country that have committed violent crimes.
Fair.
And then for undocumented migrants that are already in America, for undocumented migrants that have committed violent crimes, to deport them. And for undocumented migrants that have not committed violent crimes, to offer them a pathway to residency or citizenship.
Sorry to cut you off. You don't. Oh, okay. So you don't want to deport undocumented migrants that haven't committed crimes, but undocumented migrants that have committed crimes, you want to deport them.
Specifically violent crimes, yeah.
No, specifically
W. Dean.
Okay. So I don't disagree with anything that you just said at all. I don't think we're in disagreement in terms of, well, I guess the only thing that I would disagree with is if an undocumented migrant has caused a violent crime, I would want the American court system to handle it and actually imprison that person rather than allowing them to be free. Like, I don't want rapists to get a trip back home. You know what I mean? And then just be like, all right.
You know what? That's a good point. You know, if we would do like the deportation of undocumented migrants that have committed violent crimes, it'd be conditional given where they're deported would be where they land in a jail cell. Or
like, I mean, or I would rather house them in the American carceral structure to ensure that they are actually serving, like to ensure that they're just served. Here's a good debate tactic.
That's actually a great argument. I think that's a great point.
Ask Republicans every time they say, "Oh, I want undocumented migrants that have caused crimes to be deported." Ask them, why do you want rapists to roam free if they fucking did a rape? Why do you not? Let's say an undocumented migrant is like done a heinous.
It's cooking with that one. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Why have I never thought of that? What the
That's not why
I haven't thought about that either.
You don't want punishment. You don't want crimes to be punished. That's weird. So that's a nice little debate tactic there. But it is something that I also believe. I want amnesty for all undocumented immigrants that are living on U.S. soil right now, as long as they have not committed like any sort of heinous violent crime. But even when we entertain the notion that like we're deporting violent criminals or the Trump administration is like going after violent criminals, I think you guys all know that that's not the case.
No.
It's not like the previous administration was like, "Oh, are you Guatemalan and you did a rape? Okay, sorry, we can't arrest you." Like, that's so fucking stupid. Like, no, of course, being arrested and being prosecuted, right? So that notion is like that premise that they operate off of is like a faulty hidden premise. The idea that like the Biden administration was not adequately targeting people that have done crimes regardless of their immigration status. And that's precisely the reason why I believe it was the Associated Press that came out with initial reporting that the majority of the undocumented migrants that have been deported so far, some of which aren't even undocumented, by the way, they are deporting documented non-citizens and undocumented non-citizens. And the majority of them had not committed any crimes. And a big chunk of those who had actually done crimes had done shit like trespassing. You know what I mean? Or obstructing justice, like ridiculous, erroneous claims that normally would be thrown out under any other circumstance. And
I was under the impression that majority of individuals that they've deported so far were individuals that have been documented as committing a crime or a violent crime. But the reason why that's the case is not because they wanted to only or focus on the deportation of undocumented migrants who have committed crimes, but rather those were just the easiest undocumented migrants.
Oh,
to
are you talking
track.
about? Yeah, the ones that are in the prison system already. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and like the misconstruction from Trump supporters, creating a narrative that because for the first week, 800 out of 1,000 deportations were from individuals that were already in the prison system. You know what I mean?
They deported people that were already in the prison system, and that's why they like Tom Homan is talking about setting up a facility inside of Rikers in New York because they want to just like quickly, expeditiously deport any undocumented migrant that's done a crime. I still think it's ridiculous to do that. I think it's better to serve justice rather than just like give people a free trip back home.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah, where they're free. I totally agree with that. Yeah, you're totally right when it comes to that. So it's totally they would have to justify that the deportations wouldn't have freed people right into other places around the world because seemingly they would care about those places. Yeah. I mean, they would probably say some crazy shit like they don't give a fuck in most circumstances if you had someone who's back on the line.
Yeah, Republicans are insane. But the other secondary problem with the deportation of criminals is mass destabilization in the country that you're sending them back to, especially if you look at MS-13. If you look at the history of El Salvador, MS-13 is an is an El Salvadoran gang that was born out of undocumented migrants from El Salvador having to resort to gang violence and criminal activity in an effort to make ends meet. And then they got incredibly radicalized in the California prison structure. And then the American government sent them back to El Salvador without telling the El Salvadoran government that they were fucking criminals. And lo and behold, they now had a network where they could engage in international crime back and forth with the United States of America and basically overtook the government. I'm being a little reductive in the way that I'm explaining this story, but that's the secondary problem of just like mass releasing criminals. Not saying that like the 800 people that they deported initially were all like MS-13 style criminals or whatever, but ultimately there's also that additional issue as well when you engage in mass deportations of criminals too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we would disagree on immigration. Then I think a lot of our disagreements would probably be like on our liberal views. Like, are you like a socialist that like prioritizes cooperatives or like state or like command control?
Well, I have a cooperative, but on top of that, no, I do believe in state control. I mean, I think we already have state control in general in America as well. It's just that the incentive structure revolves around subsidies to mega corporations, and instead of the state executing any sort of centralized planning with like a multiple decade policy in mind, we're just kind of operating on quarterly returns. Like we're just trying to maximize corporate profit. So there is still a level of state control. There's no true libertarian enterprise in this country or in any country really. Of course, there has to be state control to a certain degree in order to maintain prices, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that there isn't like no state control, but like, are you arguing that like the predominant factor of the economy would be the state control or like the cooperative control? Like, are you like someone who would believe that there should be some cooperatives based on markets, or eradicate markets entirely?
I like cooperatives, and I think that there is a middle ground with like some market solutions, while still making sure that the state has the public best interest in mind in terms of creating commodities.
Okay. And then here would be my question is, what would you then like mandate there either as cooperatives or it's state control? Like if you had the ability to control that?
If I had the ability to control it, would I mandate every single corporation, every single corporate structure to be a cooperative structure?
Or like it would be state controlled, like nationalized?
I think that the government should provide, at least in the interim, the government should provide basic necessities like shelter and become a market competitor, which would be unfair for the market, certainly, with the sole purpose of eventually eradicating certain necessary commodities from the private structure. You can have personal property all day, every day, of course, and even luxury goods or whatever kind of accommodations that you desire. But ultimately, it's more so rent seeking that I'm against. It's more so private property that I think is not good and creates is at the heart of all of this inequality. But this is stuff that's never going to happen in my lifetime, I don't think. I'm simply trying to move in the direction, at least in the short term, in the direction of modest reforms that genuinely improve people's lives.
So then my thoughts are that like it sounds like your goals are you want to achieve this in the future, but your thoughts are that you were not even close or even at that point at all entirely. So pragmatically, you're just going to end up being like a social democrat.
What I advocate for, my most radical perspectives don't come from domestic policy. It's usually my anti-imperialist positions that cause a lot of ire especially in the minds of a lot of Americans. But yeah, as far as domestic policy goes, yeah, I mean, I'm an advocate for nationalized healthcare structure. I'm an advocate for socialized medicine in general, public housing in general. But these are, I would say, relatively modest reforms that exist in one way, shape, or form in other social democracies in Europe, even though they are running into the same problems with the parasitic nature of capital in terms of social democracies basically clawing back all of these social safety nets year over year with austerity measures, with the inevitable goal is privatization, and that is part of the reason why I think that I'm, I guess, a little bit more radical in the long term with what I believe. But yes, in the short term, I advocate mostly for modest social democratic proposals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I mean, it practically in terms of domestic policy sounds like we're like practically on like the same side and whatnot. Obviously, like that's why like we pretty much agree in terms of all like the policies and the people that we support and stuff. But I feel like a lot of leftists get really focused on like everyone agreeing on like those like sort of, I don't want to call them fringe economically related issues, but they're like, it's really like definitions and stuff. It's not like we don't pragmatically disagree. We get really focused on like, oh, we have that type of disagreement when we're in reality arguing, at least in the time period, for the same thing.
Yeah. Well, the reasons for why I advocate for these things might be a little different than yours, aside from like genuinely improving people's lives. And this is another thing that I'm not like secretive about, but I see a noticeable lack of class consciousness in the American working class in general. There is tremendous class consciousness for capital owners, whether they even recognize it or not, and they don't even need to have class consciousness because the system is structured to benefit their needs regardless, and to continue their position as generating engaging in capital accumulation. The entire system is designed in that way. But the reasons as to why I think it's important to be able to do this is because I want labor unions and labor militancy to at least exist in this country so that there is a valid mechanism of pushback against politicians on the Republican side of the spectrum, certainly, but even on the Democratic side as well. Because I think there's never been a moment throughout American history or history at all where concessions were given to the working class, whether it be the fucking weekends or whether it be, paid leave or any of those things, or the abolition of child labor, without real labor militancy. That has simply never happened. And the same goes for social struggles as well. Same goes for civil rights. Like, militancy is an absolute necessity. And I see the American working class as completely removed from that conversation, where they just understandably see themselves as powerless in this structure. And I think that breeds resentment, hostility, and it creates paired up with the economic volatility that many Americans experience, that creates a perfect ground for right-wing reactionary fascist movements to grow, and that's what we're seeing in America.
I think I agree with that. So I'm not as educated on economics as Parker is, but what I will say is seemingly that's compatible with like a social democrat model to like advocate for more class consciousness, to like get more social reform, better programs for individuals and like the low middle class, and create economic policy and which centers the average citizen or constituent of a country compared to those who have the most money. But I will say, maybe the more we advocate for class consciousness, the more I educate myself on like this paradigm of conflicts between classes of wealth and how to effectively resolve them. Maybe that just naturally leads you down this pathway of becoming just completely radicalized socialists,
But I don't think I joke and I say like, yeah, I have radical beliefs, but like, I mean, what's the saying?
I'm sorry, that was a play on words. I was joking too.
No. It's by no measure of mental wellness to be well adjusted to a completely insane society. Like, think about it that way, where advocacy for socialized medicine is seen as a bridge too far for many Americans who are so heavily propagandized, no matter how brilliant they fancy themselves to be. The independent thinkers who think that like social medicine means like, oh, we're going to do Venezuela style rat eating in America or whatever the fuck, right? So like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's radicalization, more so an evolution by recognizing the understandable contradictions that are baked into capitalism, because capitalism was an advancement from the previous mode of commodity production for sure. But most of even what Marx talks about in terms of capitalism is not necessarily, attacking capitalism at all, but instead simply describing capitalism with dialectics, like through the assessment of, and you might think it's a little bit reductive at this point, but like through an assessment of like capital accumulators, the capital owners, the bourgeoisie, and the workers that are wage laborers in general, the proletariat. So that's just, it's more so a description of how things are, and not necessarily like moralizing a certain position that like, workers are always good, or they always do the right things, or anything like that. There's no good bad dynamics there at all. And instead, it's just about describing how capital is accumulated.
Dean just got hit with a.
I'm having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, hit with technical.
Got hit with a meteor, dude.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts
I don't
on
understand how glorious Xi Jinping's application TikTok would do this right as I'm talking about abolishing the commodity form.
He's gone. He's getting banned.
yeah, I guess where I'm coming from, and I'm coming from someone who used to be a socialist myself for a pretty long time, and I actually started my whole content creation, like creating like leftist and socialist content, is that like a lot of these issues that exist, I think, can be solved with social democracy. And a lot of people say that there's like issues with social democracy. It starts to corrupt. People start to fight and advocate against it. But I don't think that's a critique against social democracy in of itself. I think that just means that you just need to maintain social democracy in the same type of way like we maintain our democracy.
Well, man, like that's social democracy hasn't been tried.
Well, I mean, like we could say that like we don't think that this real certain form has been tried, and I think that that's cool, but like my argument would then be is that we'd have to try it on smaller levels to be able to see whether or not it works on a larger form in order to be able to say that like it's actually effective. I don't think we'd be able to say that we should adopt it on some sort of globalized production model if it is the case that we don't have any type of level of actual probabilistic means of demonstrating how likely it is that it's going to be beneficial for workers or for people, because we could actually like hurt some of our concerns, like quality of life for workers, if we don't take that into account when we're like applying these sorts of systems, if we don't know what the empirical effect is of these different types of theoretical like theoretical models. Not to say that theoretical models can't be then used or seem to be effective later on, but it's like we just need evidence to indicate that these particular models are effective before we establish it on such a pragmatic basis worldwide, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting there anytime soon anyway. I'm not saying like tomorrow with a magic wand we are going to dissolve the class structure and live in a moneyless, classless, stateless society. You know?
Yeah, my thoughts even then, like, would even a stateless society be like desirable in the future? Like, even if we hit like full automation. So I don't want to like full on socialist debate you, but like, even if we hit full automation, like, would it even be desirable for us to get rid of that? Like, because we still want a state to like limit people from committing crimes, right?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I'm not a communist, so I think that like I can't even imagine what that would look like in general. But the way I explain it is like I'm not opposed to it. You know, I wouldn't say I'm a communist, but I wouldn't say that I'm opposed to a stateless, moneyless society, a borderless society.
Okay. Would you be against like the enforcement of certain types of laws? Like once we meet that society, I feel like in a communist society, there's no government that would enforce laws against like pedophilia. I feel like that would be true, right?
No, yes, obviously. I'm that's why I'm saying I'm not a communist, but if society evolved in a way where we're talking so far out there, like we're now talking about theoretically what it would look like, right? We're basically fantasizing about a world that is from where I'm standing impossible to imagine. But I think like the argument, I guess, would be that one, obviously most crime in general, with the exception of like antisocial personality disorder related crimes, are like psychopathy or sociopathy, like things like that, crimes born out of crimes that might be born out of like mental problems. And not to say that like people with mental health issues are criminals or whatever. I'm not saying that at all. But with the exception of those, like most crime is done because of financial circumstances, like your material conditions create a likelihood for you to go out and do crime. And I think the argument there is that like in that structure, it's already all of your needs are addressed anyway. So the only remaining crime would possibly be, like you said, pedophilia, which I guess at that stage, medical advancements would have found a solution for that as well. Like I'm assuming that's what it would look like if I were to envision a communist society. So the concept of crime in and of itself would be entirely destroyed, considering that the overwhelming majority of crime is born out of material conditions.
I mean, you can also just appeal to some libertarian enforcement mechanism, right? Don't forget those. Don't forget those collectives, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a libertarian by any means. So, and that's part. Like, I'm a state enjoyer. I often, especially in this past month, I've been talking quite a bit about how we should have 1 million more government employees. I think it's fucking ridiculous that we're trying to cut government employees rather than hire more people for the government. I think that's that's one of the biggest problems in America is that we don't have enough people doing jobs in general. Any area, like I'll give you the TSA as an example. I flew into Salt Lake City for the day to shoot a podcast with my co-host who has escaped to Utah. Okay, and it was fucking annoying. I was waiting in line, and I was waiting in line for a fucking hour. Okay, it sucked. And back in the day, I used to be like, man, fuck these guys. Like, these guys suck at their jobs. They're just like sitting around twiddling their thumbs, not doing a good job. Now I'm woke. I realize that it's not because of the individual employee that's like handling this insane amount of demand. It's that somewhere along the line, someone decided that we're going to need to do budget cuts and that we're not going to be able to open up the extra lines, right? Because we don't want to pay for the salaries of additional TSA employees at the time. Same with luggage handlers, right? Like anywhere where you experience as a consumer, anywhere you experience any sort of issue, our immediate inclination is that it's actually the fault of the individual workers who are fucking lazy, and that's wrong. That's just simply incorrect. It is directly because companies are corner cutting, cost cutting, and the most malleable aspect of commodity production always is going to be labor. So you cost cut by forcing 4 people to do the job of 8, especially when you can get away with it, especially when conditions have deteriorated and you're fearful that you might lose your job and then lose your fucking house, or not be able to pay rent anymore. The same principle holds for the federal government as well. TSA employees are already technically federal government employees anyway. That's why I use that as an example. Trump cut a bunch of TSA employees as well. I think it was like 300 or something. Really,
I like how it's ironic how MAGA says like these criminals are like taking our jobs, but really it's Donald Trump who's the criminal taking our jobs. From federal employees. Kind of crazy shit that's embarking on it. I don't mean to like go into a whole socialism debate with you, but yeah, thanks for answering all my questions. Like, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Hasan, I got a question.
All right, let's hear it.
So, it's been funny, okay? So, it's about every like 30 to 45 days, I'll check my Twitter DMs, and I'll see a new DM from you saying, "Pop out to LA and come on the show." And it's just been so funny because it's been happening for like 6 months, and at this point, I think it's hilarious. I'm no.
I told you next time you're in LA, hit me up. But you were like, "Oh, I'll come to LA even just for that alone." I was like,
"Yeah,
well,
bro, I'll pop on just for that."
I felt like that was too much pressure. I don't know where you live, but that's like.
It's not. Don't worry. I live in LA, so if he'll come out and see me too.
Yeah, I got a $65 flight one way to LA from my local airport.
Hell yeah! What do you guys think about Jubilee, Straight Arrow News? That's my biggest gripe with Jubilee.
Oh my god, I hate their fact checking so much. It's the worst ever. Also, like I think what they did with Michael Knowles here recently was pretty negligent.
Do you guys know
on their behalf?
Straight Arrow News that presents itself as an impartial news outlet, like a fact checker, is actually owned by a fucking billionaire dude. I forget what his name is. Hold on, let me look this up real quick.
That's actually a crazy issue, man. I was literally on stream like bitching. I was like, I don't know if I'm tripping, but these fact checks are trash.
Are horrible. Like,
I
know, right?
I thought I was like being dumb. I was like,
so the fact checks are right leaning.
Bro, the fact,
totally are.
And
okay,
they're always missing like incredibly important context. So they almost are purposely misleading. It's odd.
I think those are ad reads almost. I almost think that they're ad reads.
It's weird.
If you go on their website, the first thing that comes up on the commentary side is Dr. Frank Luntz. Do you guys know who that is?
Where do I know the name?
Oh yeah, that name sounds familiar.
He is a right-wing pollster, very famous right-wing pollster, and wears the ugliest toupee of all time, and also is responsible for, I don't know if you guys watched Vice, Adam McKay's movie Vice about Dick Cheney, but there's an entire segment dedicated to him. He's responsible for things like coming up with new ways of selling the Bush-Cheney administration's like insane proposals, like death tax.
Yep.
Yeah, that it used to be called estate tax, but now it's called death tax because of the likes of Frank Luntz. But beyond Frank Luntz, the entire thing is owned by. I'm trying to figure out the name of the guy who owns it. Like, not on the advisor board. If you look at their advisor board on the website, you'll find out that there's like a bunch of right-wing people on there. But like, oh, Joe Ricketts, that's the guy. Joe Ricketts is the CEO and founder of Straight Arrow News. He is also I think he's a TD Ameritrade. Yeah, he founded the company that later became TD Ameritrade, a securities industry leader that empowers self-directed investors with powerful and innovative investment tools and training. TD Ameritrade was acquired by Charles Schwab Corporation in November of 2019. Now, when you look up Joe Ricketts, however, on Wikipedia, you find out a little bit more about little old Joe Ricketts' political perspectives, aside from the fact that he's obviously a fucking billionaire. So he's,
Dude owns the Chicago Cubs. I don't know that.
Yeah, he's not going to have great opinions in general, being a billionaire. But then you look up Then you look up his anti-Muslim and racist email controversy,
Oh God, Jesus Christ.
and you find out that Splinter News in February 5th, 2019, released a cache of Ricketts' emails from 2009 to 2014. He wrote that Islam could not create a civil society, that we cannot ever let Islam become a large part of our society, and that Muslims are naturally in parentheses, our enemy. Included were Obama citizenship conspiracy theory emails and claims that Obama favored Islam over other religions. Included were multiple racist joke emails that he received and responded to positively, including slurs against black and Hispanic people. He apologized for the emails after they were made public.
And this is the company that does the fact checking on that.
Totally not biased at all.
That's
Okay.
actually kind of crazy.
My thoughts are, and I've kind of gathered these thoughts just from the 2 episodes I shot, is that all of their production team is all very liberal, libbed out in like the best way possible. Okay.
Yep. Cool.
But then all of their post production, are like some incel 34-year-old men that lean so far right. It's unhealthy, right? And that's kind of the dynamic that I've seen, because everybody in production, super liberal, super cool, super fun to work with, and honestly, pretty great people from my experience.
Yep.
But then, the moment it goes to posts, that's when it gets a little bit tricky. And then one other small thing that I noticed was for the episode that I filmed, this one woke teen versus 20 Trump supporters, I had no control over what happened with the content that was filmed. It was sent to their post team and it was put live on YouTube. But something I noticed was that when Ben Shapiro did his episode, they gave him and his team full editorial control over what parts of it went live and what parts of it didn't go live.
And one thing that happened with that is that like they actually cut off my main debate with Ben and they put it on the second Jubilee channel. And the same thing with like my debate on politics with Charlie. They completely cut it out from like the main video and posted it on like the second account or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, at least they still made use of it, so that's good.
That is true.
That is, of course, these guys are very big content creators in general, so they probably get those assurances ahead of time, and it's in Jubilee's best interest to keep them happy. Like, I'm sure if I did the same thing, they would probably give me the same assurances as well. I wouldn't say that's an indication of their right-wing leanings, but the entire concept of, debate the humanity of trans people with trans people in and of itself is already like inherently right-wing, in my opinion. Not to say I'm against that sort of thing at all. Like, I'm not anti-debate across the board, but it always starts on this like faulty premise. It always starts on this like obvious imbalance. Like there was a
that's what pisses me off, is that debate about the existence of trans individuals already is a little bit iffy, but then what they do is they'll get some PR media trained in it for like 20 years, right winger.
It's making him the hero, and putting him up against people who are not professional debaters. Like when they're not professional debaters and they're just randoms, and the person who's the hero is arguing that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely. That's what's problematic, is that like the hero, the person who's being shown to be like, oh, the rational person, while there's the triggered person on the other side, is shown that way. And like people didn't have an issue with it with Charlie Kirk is because we had pretty good debaters, right? Like I'm not saying no one was good at the debaters there, but like obviously there was most of the people there were not like professionalized debaters, right? They weren't like people that have platforms or things like that. They weren't people that have like backgrounds debating that type of stuff. It was just going to be like a typical person who's debating, right? Or who believes that.
No, absolutely. That is very consistent with like not just Jubilee but across the board. Like the right has a network of operatives and a lot more money because obviously consolidated wealth understands the importance of propaganda, and especially right-wing propaganda, which is very effective in terms of creating distractions for people. So they fund a lot of people. Like it's not just PragerU, you know what I mean? They're very well funded. So that creates a lot more professional commentators in general. Yeah, that's why there's also a noticeable difference, I think, with like organic right-wing content creators like that fucking old millennial guy that everybody.
Oh my god, I fucking
Bro,
hate
don't
that
even
guy.
get me fucking started on that dude.
You know about OM, Hassan?
Dude,
I can't
oh
believe
my
you know
God.
about him. I can't believe you know about him.
Because I see he's just so like he does the. Is he Gen X or millennial? I don't know. He does the millennial pause, and he has that like annoying like. I know what I'm talking.
The guy said that he wanted to grate me. One night he was on live.
It's horrible.
He was very drunk, and he straight up said that I'm pretty. I'm a very pretty guy, and if he was gay, he said this. If I was gay, that's what he said. If he was gay, that I would be a target of his.
Are you talking about older millennial?
Yeah.
Yes.
He
Yeah,
also
I
said he
mean,
wants to throw disabled people off of mountains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I only guess you were talking about him because you said he was super drunk on live. I mean, that he does have like 3 DUIs.
Yeah, he gets hammered like every night and then goes talking shit to other
Yeah.
people. It's kind of sad.
One day, if he works hard enough.
He'll work at Fox. Maybe he'll be the next Department of Defense secretary. I don't know. One day.
That guy's like, that's the thing. Like, he's too gross. He came up like organically. He didn't go through the farm corporation. Like, he didn't go through Daily Wire like Brett Cooper. You know what I
Now,
mean?
see, Harry.
You want to know how he blew up? He blew up making content about Harry, about how he hates Harry.
Over
Yeah,
Winter
what
has
you're
like 3 or 4 DUI, so he'd be the next director of ATF.
yeah. Yeah, no, he's the DUI national champion. Racking them up.
You gotta get a DUI. I mean, that's always been the case for Florida politics in general. So I'm glad that we're just like nationalized.
And what do you know? Older millennial lives in Florida. So
Yeah.
Dude, that's actually crazy. I had
He said if he was, when he was drunk, he said that he would, what did you, grape you? That is also very, very Florida.
Yeah.
oh man, yeah, that guy sucks.
That
guy fucking sucks.
Designed to capture cryptocurrency pedophiles.
Bob.
I feel so bad. I feel so bad. For
How do we fix that?
We don't.
And I mean this.
It's over.
I mean this very seriously. What do we do about like cultures across our country that are just so ingrained in right-wing nonsense that just causes so much harm to so many people? How do you pull individuals out of that and somehow like turn it around in, like, for instance, like a state like Florida or some of the deep red places in Texas?
You got to give them a job. That's what you got to do. So they just, shut the fuck up and work. But I mean, honestly, you can't really do that much. Like, I think you just have to work. I don't think it's about like fixing individuals by arguing with them necessarily, but instead fixing the underlying material issues that create more reactionaries in general. Because if people's like immediate needs are addressed, they're less likely to go down this pipeline. There's always going to be ridiculous right-wing positions across the board, but I think the best possible thing to do is try to, make people help people get healthcare and things like that, and keep them preoccupied.
Yeah, no. You actually make a good point there. When individuals' immediate needs are not addressed, they're more likely to go down that pipeline. Because I've always been trying to understand why the average Republican has less money than the average Democrat, and the Democrat Party is obviously going to be better comparatively to the Republican Party for those with less wealth. And I've always tried to explain this phenomenon, and I think
Parker,
that
please.
you've kind of explained it. It's when you don't have your immediate needs met, you're more likely to ride to the right.
Yeah.
And you're more likely to have those needs met. The more money you have.
Hey, what up, Mason?
Or capitalism.
Yo, Hank, what's going on here? But I came in because I heard some chatter going on, specifically just about socialism versus liberalism. What's going on?
We're just having a
I'll be good, man.
we're just having a patriot meetup, Mason.
Yeah, there's a radical communist above my head. And Harry and I are, the sane ones.
Yeah, we got the DNC shills.
That's
I don't
right.
know what you're talking about, the communists. This guy's the biggest patriot I know.
I'm kidding.
Y'all haven't heard of Hank Pecker? You should look into him.
Yeah.
Got some research to do.
Mason is my sleeper cell in all the Jubilee.
Jesus Christ.
I know I saw that one Jubilee episode of him like sneaking in that, and I thought it was the funniest shit ever.
Yeah.
I was dying.
No, I heard like a little bit about the Michael Knoll shit, and I just have to say, they told us that the prompts were way more chill than that. It was fucking insane when he's just like transgenderism should be eradicated or whatever it is that he said. Because like that was completely genocidal, and I don't know how they're able to just.
Well, you know what probably
Right,
happened
that's it.
was the same thing that they tried to do to me. So I worked out like the prompts for my woke teen video with him for like a month. But it was like 3 days before I was supposed to fly out to LA. I get an email from the director, and they're like, "Hey, we just want to change up the prompts to make them a little bit more oriented for the success of the video." Then all of a
Which is just,
sudden,
like, rage
they
baiting as much as
then
possible.
all of a sudden they want me to debate that Donald Trump will like fucking destroy America and kill everybody. And
Did you sign like an NDA with him, Dean? Like, are you planning on going on more videos?
No, I haven't signed an NDA with him.
Because like, did they pay you a certain amount of money? Because there's also allegations going around that they paid him like tens of thousands of dollars to come on, which is
I've heard that too, and I actually brought that up with Dean. Dean has never.
Alexis Rose. Those come. Alexis
Yeah.
Rose. I
Yeah.
just saw her in the chat. She actually might even be here. No, I didn't get paid a dime. In fact, I even paid for my own plane ride out there. But you know, I don't care. I love the experience nonetheless. And I doubt that Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, or any of those people got paid. I'll say it like just in conversation with them. It doesn't seem like, in a very genuine way, it didn't seem like they had the money to cover me. So I doubt it if they had the money to cover them. But it's it's possible that they did. I wonder what the evidence for the claim is.
I mean, I think that Ben
Here-
Shapiro
here
did
my-
them more of a favor just because of how much of a like national profile he has. But they definitely helped Michael Knowles because nobody knows who that motherfucker is unless they are politically like involved.
Yeah, I don't know why Michael Knowles would have gotten paid that much money, because the thing is they couldn't have made that much money off of the YouTube ad revenue. It's just not possible off YouTube ad revenue off of how many views the video got.
Right.
So it would have had to have been an ad read on the video, which it depends on how much they made off the ad read, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hassan, would you consider going on a Jubilee episode?
They've asked a bunch of times, and they've been asking for years.
Yeah.
I thought I would do it with like Ben Shapiro, but then I think about it and I'm like, why don't I just set it up on my own? I guess Ben Shapiro won't do it, but
I think you should just set it up on your own.
yeah, if I, why would I do that on Jubilee? Any number of different like debates that they want to put together, I could just like do on my own if I felt the need to do so. But I mean, it is good. I mean, they get a lot of views, and that's a good thing. They get a lot of TikTok clips out of it, and it drives discourse for a little bit. So maybe.
Yeah, drive it in the right way. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, it just depends on like what type of content you would want to do. If that's not like stuff you're interested in, that's obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like debating, and then I'm not a good debater. But I also will still, I've debated plenty of conservative commentators, like both on our Fox local here in LA, and also on Politicon back in the day when they had that.
The OG Charlie Kirk debater, dude.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that. I've seen that.
I live like a capitalist chink. That's so funny. Someone resurfaced that debate recently, and it went viral, and people were like, "This guy's lying. He doesn't make $60,000 a year. He lives in a $3 million mansion." I'm like, dude, it's conservatives don't understand the concept of time.
That's so real, dude. Yeah.
You literally are just like, oh, time. How does it change? What happens when days go by? Like, it's a fucking debate from like 2017 or 2016 or some shit. But
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, but I mean, I think those are good for driving discourse, like really good for driving discourse and getting the other side involved. And I think that the more like we engage in these types of conversations, the more people will critically think about those types of things. Because I think when people go into their own echo chambers, they just they don't critically think as much.
I think that there definitely is a good that comes from just making these people look unhinged and stupid to the greater public. But where is the threshold where it becomes harmful for just platforming insane shit? I think that there has to be a line where it's okay, this is not something that's a civil discourse.
I think
I think we do that on live all the time. There are certain people where we're gonna be okay, I can't debate this person. This person's so insane, too much, right? That definitely happens on the live and stuff. But it's also the person who's in the main person or the host of it is the person that has good views,
Well, I
is
feel
really
like-
important as well. And also like having good arguments. If you have good arguments, it's okay to platform. If you don't have good arguments, it's not okay.
I think it.
I just wanted to say real quick. I feel like I've probably like tested that line, like the most out of creators in
Because you went to
like
the
6
the
months.
extreme of the conversation.
You went to that one.
talking with
Yeah.
one dude.
Yeah, and I think I found it. I think I found the line. So for me, I was told that Aiden Ross wanted to bring me on to debate somebody that was like right leaning. First it was going to be Candace Owens or Ben Shapiro even, and then I learned day of they bait and switch. They're like debate Nick Fuentes or we're going to get somebody else to. Then I debate Nick Fuentes. I think I fucking like destroyed him in the debate, and I honestly think that conversation yielded more good than bad.
You did
societally
destroy him.
speaking, because I just made his arguments look so terrible. But after that, I ended up getting around to like Myron Gaines, and there was a point where I was going to debate Myron Gaines. But then I inevitably ended up like watching this guy go on a Twitter space and just like slur at women and minorities for 30 minutes straight. And whenever anybody would be like, man, you shouldn't do that, he was like, oh, well, you're just a beta, like cuck F slur. And after seeing that, like I never ended up talking to him. And I think the red line for me really does fall at one's ability to at least try to demonstrate their beliefs to be logical. Because so if someone wants to position themselves as a rational thinker that wants to guide humanity towards the best future, and they frame that to be alt-right, well, that's something that you could actually debunk because they uphold some sentiment of rationality. But as soon as they stop upholding that sentiment of rationality, I think that's where you shouldn't engage. But as long as there exists this collective sentiment of rationality amongst a group of people engaging in like similar thoughts.
And I have also had a bait and switch with Nick Fuentes many, many years ago.
Really?
And I see that as one of the worst moments of my career, not because he's like a profound debater or anything like that, but because I think there are ideas that is better not to platform at all, especially because Nazis don't, like open neo-Nazis don't necessarily care about the truth at all. They just want a platform. They will lie to you knowing full well that they're lying to you, and they don't necessarily care about the truth at all. And every moment that you waste arguing with them in general is a moment where they're still getting in front of people and maybe even convincing them. Nick Fuentes, I would say, is a particularly good propagandist in that vein. So I've always had a never platform Nazi policy, with the only exception being that if they reach a certain point of prominence or if they're getting like highlighted by mainstream outlets, like Richard Spencer used to get a lot of coverage from the New York Times in the first Trump era, and I would lose my fucking mind. I would do like pieces on it all the time. But with the exception of like reaching a level of national prominence, I always stay back from. I always urge people not to engage with Nazis at all. Especially if you have a large platform. You know what I mean? You don't want that shit to spread at all.
I think like deplatforming is shown to work, right? Like as much as I criticize like the Biden regime, I think that seeing Nazis off of Twitter did a lot of good towards like isolating them from being able to gain more followers. Like I don't remember ever seeing Nick Fuentes clips until the Elon takeover. And I think that that's a direct product of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think like Dean, I think like a lot of problem is like Hassan's saying.
I actually think that's Aiden Ross. Aiden Ross kind of like tried to like mainstream Nick Fuentes. So I think the reason why is it just there was a correlation causation sort of moment.
No, it was
like
initially Destiny. He's the one who initially revitalized Nick Fuentes' career. He had him on. He like debated him at his house. They ate chicken and waffles together. He gave his phone number. He gave his fucking phone number to Adam22 so he could go on like the podcast route and go on all these podcasts. There's like a clip of him literally being like, "Why doesn't he appreciate me more?" Like I literally made his career. I gave his phone number to Adam22, and it's just like that's what I worry about all the time when I see people that are always engaging in debate. Where I'm like, you don't ever want to lose yourself in becoming this this guy that only is in it for like dunking on people, and in sight of like a greater political project that you know you might believe in. I don't know. I don't know what everyone's political background is here. So
Yeah, Dean, it all comes back. It all comes back to the idea of like normalization, right? Like even if you're going in there and shitting on them, and like everybody sees it as like the logical sentiment is there. Like if they get anywhere near a platform, then they're like, and you see it so much in like a macro sense. I talk all the time about like the normalization of like fucking fight or like however many years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, like Trump's holding like an LGBTQ plus flag on stage, and we're like arguing with MAGA about how like they're like, oh, see, he loves everyone. Now that's like would be unheard of, and it's just the idea of like you start to get into these spaces where people are able to like suggest horrible,
desensitized.
Yeah, they become desensitizing because even if you do inevitably shit on them, then maybe like just on a one-on-one level, like you go on live and someone comes up and they're like, oh, well, I think that. They're just being completely logical. Oh, I think that like Fuentes shit on you, blah, blah, blah. And it becomes like a normalized thing to debate when there was no debate to begin with. Like he was never coming out with logic. And what that causes is like this normalization. And so like, it's exactly how I'm like,
way to put it.
It's exactly
Donald Trump is a literal case study in this.
Yeah, it's exactly how the Republican Party operates. And actually how like Hasan, like, in some ways, even though I have disagreements with Hasan, like you've talked about like the idea like how Republicans are able to use like when they want to get something done, they don't care about the public opinion around that thing, where Democrats may view like public opinion as like weather. They need to like constantly change their views based on what people are thinking. Like Republicans knew it, however many years ago, a decade ago, that like it being kind of this anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment at the time, at least publicly, was not nearly as popular, but they didn't care. They just started to like push it and normalize it, and now all of a sudden like it's very normal to say like horrible, awful things. And so like it's not really about, I think it's, you know, it's less about like you determining the line and more about like you like it's just constant like normalization. And if there was never a debate to begin with, like after you went on and then like the whole thing happened with Fuentes, Aiden Ross DM'd me and was like, do you want to debate Fuentes? And I was like, no, because I'm obviously much smaller than you, much smaller than any of them. But again, I'm like seeing like it's just like, I'm like, I could do that, but you're just like bringing people, you're just normalizing a conversation that there was never a conversation to begin with. You know what I mean?
You know, Chris,
So
I was
wait. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
No,
so
no,
no,
go ahead.
I was thinking about that too, because Dean and I had like a small conversation about like whether or not he should do it or not. And I was half mind of it because although I agree with you, Chris, that there's a normalization going on of it in part, but at the same time, these ideas are growing and we need people to push back because we are losing our like memory of these things.
But why are they growing? That's the question. It's like to Mason's point, I'd also probably have any disagreements with. Like again, like you're seeing these things grow because like Musk gets Twitter, people stop getting deplatformed, and then all these conversations just become normalized.
Yeah. No.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. As we're debating them, we're like causing them to be more
I think what Matt's saying is that like the normalization comes from the fact that people had these beliefs in the first place. So you have to address that people have these beliefs. My point in terms of a content creator is that you address it if they already have like if it's already a normalized conversation and you're responding to that normalization, or if there's going to be something in which causes a likelihood in which it could be normalized. So it is an effort to not to stigmatize it or to make sure that it's not normalized. Well, like, do you think you can engage in a conversation against it without normalizing the conversation of it? In all circumstances, it depends on the frequency of conversation.
There can be a net good from like these conversations. I think if there's a moderator that represents like the Overton window or like what actually what's an acceptable yeah, exactly. Aiden Ross is not the moderator for that. But like the thing that I really criticize Jubilee on is just equivocating these positions as like equal standing. Like, oh, they're just having minor disagreements on like eugenics, or they're having minor disagreements on who deserves civil rights in this country. Like, that's not a way to have a productive conversation. And to all y'all's point, it just continues to normalize these positions as legitimate like disagreements. Where if you have like somebody who's actually judging like no, actually, this is not something that is up for debate. Kind of piggybacking on what Chris said, like this has been solved. We're not fighting civil rights anymore. These are issues that we've been able to progress from. Like this is not a disagreement that we're going to
Exactly. It's the same shit.
We can say that from like a point in which it hasn't been normalized and it's not impacting people. But as soon as it does impact people, we have to respond to it. You know what I'm saying? So in order to prevent it from happening, we have to respond to it. Right. So like there are circumstances where I think that we would have to address it if it's impacting people. But if it's not impacting people, well, then obviously then you wouldn't want to address it and normalize it because then it could impact people negatively in the future.
But there are ways to respond, right, without having like that immediate conversation, right? Like you can make like whatever reaction video or a debunking video or however it is that you're going to use your media platform in order to address those concerns without like having to legitimize that person and bring it to like an equal dialogue. I think the dialogue is what makes it like blood sport debate. You can still like criticize these ideas and debunk them without having to have this person on a platform.
Matt, I interrupted Matt. Guys, I have to go back to Matt because I like brutally interrupted him when he was trying to say
No, it's all good. No. I was just going to finish that. My reason for saying that is because there's a lack of education on the topic, right? We have reports and we have studied that among like young people today, only like
$10 gifts.
Hassan,
You've almost made $200.
So that number above your head is $200.
Yeah.
Bro, why are you guys giving money to a millionaire? What the fuck's wrong with you?
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Did you just do a money spread on a TikTok?
God.
Stream?
Wow.
Are you
I
serious?
don't even know how to collect this money. I don't know how to. I don't think I get paid off TikTok.
Yeah, bro. We got.
Well, you can always take that money and you can like send it somewhere.
You could.
Wait, can I use it on the TikTok shop?
Yeah,
You could use it.
you can actually send it to people. Like if you see someone on your TikTok feed and like you see someone that you like, you can just send them money if like they might need it or something. Like you can convert them into stuff that you can send people.
Like, am I live right now on my TikTok?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
See that. Yeah.
I don't know. Like
it's not like a host, but it's like they can see the notification.
It's like if they scroll past like your video, your profile shows up differently and says you're live.
Oh shit! So wait, so it doesn't show up on the For You page as me?
No, it does do that too. It does do that too. It's just
we're
saying
also,
like it doesn't like I don't know. It's like
we're also only on my second account right now, so this isn't even my main TikTok. This is just where I come out to hang out and shoot the shit.
Yeah, Hassan, you could cash those out, donate them to the DNC, and then it's funneled back to Harry and I. So
Yeah, there you go.
No, but seriously,
you
know, if you're just like literally fucking around
Nice,
on TikTok, what you should do is, you know,
I'm hilarious.
Obviously, you're like predisposed to an algorithm of like debate content because you're able to find this. Just go find some like, you know, some leftists that you fuck with that you think are spreading a good message and, you know, show them some love.
Bro, this is
Like Chris.
Like, yo, give me the money spread.
Oh, dear God.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'm an old man. It's almost about to be 11 here. But
all right, Hassan, it was a pleasure, bro. Thanks for
Very
coming
nice to meet you.
One moment. Hassan, it was a pleasure to finally meet you and speak to you in person. You know, I'm gonna finish that content nuke and I'll see if I have any critiques for you, and I'll let you know the next time
can go over it.
and we could go over it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, peace, guys.
All right, man. Be safe.
Nice meeting you, man.
Peace, man.
See you, Hassan.
Yeah, chill.
Does he know how to leave?
Yo, dude, that was crazy.
Trying to be like, he said
That was crazy work.
I'm just saying.
Come on, Chris.
Chris calling Hassan a boomer, like.
Yeah,
called
actually
himself
calling
a
us on a
boomer,
boomer is crazy.
He
That's
called himself a
diabolical.
boomer. He was like,
I
what are
was
these?
so late to this. Did he
I know,
just,
but
like,
that's
hop in here?
himself, dude.
Yeah.
That's
I just
himself.
want to
That's
say
not
also,
you.